Hello and welcome to a new video here on my channel here at commaik. I use a lot of surveillance technology in my house and also my own IP camera system. I have PoE cameras, I have Wi-Fi cameras, doorbells, I have battery-powered cameras, NVR, HomeHub and so on. I've already shown you how all this works in various videos, and I often get questions like how exactly does the network work? What do I have to connect where? How does the battery setup work? Do I have to use the Wi-Fi from the HomeHub? Can I use my own network? I want to get to the bottom of these exact questions in this video and discuss with you in detail how you can set up your own IP surveillance camera system at home. And it doesn't matter at all whether you want to use PoE cameras, Wi-Fi cameras or battery-powered cameras, because in the end everything is connected to the same network. After you've watched this video, you'll know the complete setup of such a network, you'll know what accessories you need, and you'll know which network, which solution is the most sensible for your home, for your property, for your project. Let's start with the basics. An IP camera is ultimately a normal network device, just like you probably already have at home. A computer, a network printer, a smart TV, your phone, when you log into your Wi-Fi at home, all of that works via IP addresses. This means that your router at home recognizes the devices, incorporates them, assigns a unique address, and by means of this address, the devices can communicate with each other or over the internet. A camera is no different in this regard. It's like a TV or a printer and can be integrated directly into the home network. What's very important here is that it doesn't matter whether you use PoE, Wi-Fi or battery-powered cameras. In the end, they all have the same principle. They register on the network, get an address assigned by your router, and that's how the whole thing works with each other. So the router is always the central unit. Nothing works without a router, but the router is ultimately the device you use to access the internet, which you probably already have. Before I go into detail with you and show you exactly how, what, when and where to connect things, I'll show you my centerpiece. Here in the old shoe room, you'll find my small server rack. I've retrofitted several of these in this old building. And here is the Reolink network video recorder. It's connected directly via the main switch up here, and from this main switch only a single cable goes into the Reolink network video recorder. In addition, I've connected a monitor up there via HDMI, and then I can control everything directly from here using the mouse that comes with the NVR. So you see, the noise that my older NVR still makes doesn't bother me at all, because I'm here completely outside the living area in a protected separate space. I've also installed a UPS here, which means that in the event of a power outage or something similar, the system simply keeps running. You don't need to set up such a huge box. If you already have a server rack, you can of course use it. What's important is that you only need a single cable from the switch to the NVR. And from this switch, another cable then goes to my router or to the other switches, to my computers, everywhere I need it. You don't necessarily need the screen up there, at least not permanently. It's handy, of course, when I'm here and want to quickly check on something. Once the system is installed, you don't need another screen. You can control everything conveniently via the computer, on the client, or via the app on your smartphone. Only if you install a new camera that also needs to be registered with the NVR, then this initial registration must always be done directly here on the device. That doesn't work via the client. Those are the security locks that Reolink has built in here. So you have to make sure when you install new cameras that you have some access to a screen to do it directly on the device. Well, that's it for that part. I'll take you back to my office now and show you the setup in detail, how to integrate a PoE camera into the network, battery cameras, Wi-Fi cameras. And if you have any questions at this point, go ahead and write a comment below the video. And if you want to know what I've installed here and where you can get it, also check below the video. I've linked everything for you there. Now that you've seen my central unit, the legitimate question arises, what else do I need to set up a camera surveillance system? Well, let's start in order. First of all, you'll of course need a camera. For example, one like this. The camera I'm holding here is a wired PoE camera. This means that this cable not only transmits the data, but also provides the power supply. One cable for data and power supply. In addition, there are also Wi-Fi cameras. Wi-Fi cameras are characterized by transmitting data via a Wi-Fi signal, but the power supply is still wired, for example, with a power plug or a power adapter. And the third option you have are so-called battery cameras, for example, this doorbell from Reolink. With this doorbell, the data is transmitted via Wi-Fi, just like with a Wi-Fi camera, but there is no fixed power supply. There's a battery built in here, which has to be recharged regularly. That's why battery cameras usually come with a solar panel that recharges the camera using solar power. Once you have the cameras, you of course also have to store the data that is recorded somewhere. There are also several options for this. Option number one, which is the easiest option, is to store the data directly on an SD card, for example, one like this, which is then simply inserted into the cameras on the back, on the bottom, or wherever. As soon as the card is full, you can set it up to automatically overwrite from the beginning, in an endless loop, so to speak. You can assume that a good card will last for about 5 or 6 years. At some point, however, the cards are worn out and need to be replaced. That's why, in my opinion, it's worth setting up another backup system, namely indoors. This also has the advantage that if the entire camera is stolen and with it the card and all the data, you'll still have a second copy of that data in this case. You have established redundancy. For this case, there is, for example, the NVR or the HomeHub or the HomeHub Pro or the derivatives from other manufacturers. The NVR that I have here, which you saw earlier, is the RLN36. It can process 36 camera streams and record them and access them at the same time. This thing really has a lot of power. You can see on the back, next to the power connection, I have the 2 ports for the monitor. I have RCA inputs and outputs, USB ports, and a total of 5 network ports here. The network ports that I have here, these 4, I could connect a camera directly to them. However, my RLN36 does not support active power supply for the cameras. This device does not support PoE, no power over Ethernet. For that, you would have to use the RLN16 or the RLN8. Those devices can do that. It doesn't work with this device because I would theoretically have to supply power to 36 cameras, and at some point that just doesn't work anymore. Additionally, I have connections here on the back to connect a proper alarm system to pass on and process signals. Alternatively, I also have my HomeHub. This is the small HomeHub. There is also the large counterpart, the HomeHub Pro. The difference between the two is that this one has space for 2 SD cards of 512 gigabytes each, so 1 terabyte is the maximum amount of data I can store. The HomeHub Pro can accommodate a real hard drive and thus store 16 terabytes of data. These devices must, of course, be integrated into the network so that the data from the camera can also be stored on these hard drives, 48 terabytes by the way, here in the NVR. So I've shown you what the data is recorded with and where it can be stored. Now comes the exciting question, how do you combine all of this? How do I get the data from the cameras to the NVR, HomeHub, or to other storage systems, for example your NAS? In that case, you need a network. Everything has to be connected, but don't worry, you usually already have a network. At home, at the latest, when you come home with your smartphone and connect to the Wi-Fi, you know you have a network. And at the very top of the network is the central control unit, which is your router. Whether it's a Fritz box, a speed port, or from Netgear or whoever else, you usually have such a device where the cable comes from the phone jack towards the internet, and inside it's distributed throughout your house. I personally use a Fritz box as a router. And this Fritz box is connected directly to the main network switch with a LAN cable from where everything is distributed. What's important is one cable for the router in connection with the main switch. From there, it's distributed further via a switch. And a switch is nothing more than a distributor. It can also be much smaller, for example, like this model here. This particular switch is a model with a total of 10 ports. Here you have the option to connect 8 devices, or rather 10 devices, to each other and distribute the data between these devices. The control of who gets which data, that's handled by the Fritzbox. That's why the Fritzbox must definitely be connected to this router. I'll just show you this as an example by plugging a network cable into port 1 here at the front, and you can just imagine the other half being plugged into the back of my Fritzbox. This means my router is connected to this switch. From this switch, I now have to distribute the data within my security camera system. I definitely want to connect my NVR there. So I'll use the option with another cable and I'll plug it in here into number 2. And then this cable into the network socket here at the back. But I also have, as you saw earlier, a home hub, which I can also connect by plugging the cable in here on the back. That works too. So you see, I now have data coming in from the Fritzbox once and data going out twice, depending on how it's all distributed. It also doesn't matter where I plug everything in, it's completely irrelevant, the device does it all automatically. But now I also want to integrate my cameras, and you've probably already guessed it. I have another cable, and just for the sake of appearance, I'll plug it in here from the other side and now connect my camera here. Done. In this case, I've now set up a PoE system here. This means that my router controls this entire system. My router tells the switch what should go where by correctly labeling the network addresses, so to speak. Now the following happens. The camera sends signals, it sends the images go through this cable to the switch. The switch gets the right signal to send everything through this cable to the NVR, through this cable to the home hub, and it does so in parallel. And if I'm also watching the live images on my phone at the same time, no matter where I am, on the Wi-Fi or somewhere out in the wide world, the signal is also forwarded via the router, which is connected back there using Wi-Fi or mobile data. So you see, it's already working. And the exciting thing about this device here is that this device also provides a power supply for the end devices, the so-called PoE, Power over Ethernet. This means that in addition to the data, a voltage is also fed in, which is a power supply, so that I can power my PoE cameras. I don't need an additional power cable. This device does it all. If this device has to bridge cable lengths longer than, say, 70 or 80 meters, it will eventually stop working. In theory, the cable length for this power supply can be 100 meters, but in practice it's usually a bit less. So how do we deal with that? What if this PoE switch is on one side of the house and the camera is maybe 150 meters of cable away across the entire house and through the garden somewhere else entirely? Well, you have several options, of course. Option number one is, in addition to this switch, after 100 meters, or rather after 70 meters, you have a second switch. It can be the same model or a different one. The only important thing is that this switch supports PoE. Then you plug this cable into the other switch, and from the other switch you run another cable to the camera. You can practically place the device right in the middle and use it to forward the signal and also ensure the power supply from the second device. And it doesn't matter that a power supply is already active here, because the devices communicate with each other. Power is only forwarded if it's actually needed by the end device. Now, if on the other side the second switch also has a cable connected to a printer, for example, or a cable to the TV, no problem, it all works. But if you say there's nothing else on the other side and you don't want to install a switch there because, as you can see, there are still a few open ports and that's too risky for you, then there's the option, for example, of using what's called a PoE injector. This device is nothing more than, well, a power source that is integrated into the existing cable. Specifically, you do nothing more than take your cable, maybe plug it into the back of the Fritzbox or into a switch that doesn't support PoE. The cable is inserted on one side, the data comes in here and is exchanged, and a second cable then goes from here to the camera and is supplied with power. This device has a proper power connection on the back. A cable like this is plugged in here and it's simply supplied with 220 volts of mains power, and that's how you can also ensure the power supply for your camera. This PoE injector is, well, intended for situations where the cable runs are very, very long to ensure a power supply somewhere in the middle or just before the camera. Of course, it's important that you also have a power connection there. So with that, I'd be done with a PoE network. You have a central control unit, the router that manages everything, and you have the data storage here on your left. The PoE injector is an additional option. Now the question arises, what do I do with Wi-Fi cameras? What do I do with battery-powered cameras? Well, in the end, it's nothing different from what you already do with your phone. You come home and the phone is connected to the Wi-Fi. Nothing different happens with a battery-powered Wi-Fi camera or with a regular Wi-Fi camera. The power supply doesn't matter with these cameras because they are either permanently connected to the power grid or they have a battery. So they don't need PoE. The Wi-Fi signal is sent from the camera or the doorbell directly to your router, which has small antennas and picks up the signal. Just like you know from your phone. And now, the only problem that could arise is that the Wi-Fi signal from your doorbell is no longer strong enough to reach the router. I live in an old building here and sometimes have walls that are 60 centimeters thick. So you can imagine that the Wi-Fi signal doesn't really have a long range. But what should I do now? Well, I can simply extend or boost the Wi-Fi signal. That's where a so-called repeater comes into play, for example, a device like this. This is a repeater from Fritz. I also have a Fritzbox as a router, so that makes sense. Ultimately, it's nothing more than a device that captures the Wi-Fi signal from my router and simply extends it from here. With this, I can definitely increase the range, but you have to consider that with each extension, and you can connect several in a row, the Wi-Fi signal will always have, well, less data throughput. As a rule of thumb, they say that for each repeater, the data volume that can be transferred is halved. Don't worry, you can still easily send 8K images back and forth in the live stream. The amount of data you can send with it is still gigantic. But there are solutions to optimize this even further. Among other things, for example, you can also connect this model here with a network cable. And there are two options for that. Option number one is that I connect this Fritzbox, for example, with a relatively long cable to my existing switch. Now just imagine this at a distance of 50 meters, where I place this in the furthest corner of my house, somewhere in the basement, simply plugged into the socket. And the Wi-Fi signal is then sent from here to the camera, which might be hanging on the other side of the house wall 20 meters away. In that case, I'm no longer dependent on my Fritzbox, but instead have the Wi-Fi signal from this device. My phone, my cell phone, can of course also use this Wi-Fi signal. I like that. The second option you have is that the Wi-Fi signal, the existing Wi-Fi signal from your Fritzbox, is forwarded wirelessly to this repeater. It can forward it wirelessly, but it can also forward the data via cable. Via cable, for example, directly to your camera. The camera, well, this Fritz repeater does not support PoE. This means that in this case I would have to connect an injector in between and a second cable to the camera, and then I could also install this system completely independently somewhere else. I hope that's understandable for you. So with a repeater like this, you can extend the Wi-Fi signal completely wirelessly via cable and wireless, or wireless and then cable, just as you need it. My recommendation is to use your own network. Use the manufacturers you already have. In this case, for example, Fritz supports the mesh network. This means I only have to pair the devices with each other once, and all the devices, and I have several of them, function like one large, complete Wi-Fi network. I no longer have any network dropouts on my entire property, for example, when I'm on the Wi-Fi with my phone. By the way, devices like the HomeHub offer their own Wi-Fi, just like the NVR. It doesn't have Wi-Fi, but it does have its own network. If you integrate the cameras directly into the HomeHub's Wi-Fi, you are, yes, limited to the HomeHub's Wi-Fi. That's 20 meters, you won't get more than that. If you want to extend that, it won't work with this anymore. Instead, you'll have to use a dedicated system from the manufacturer. I've now shown you how I've set up my IP camera system, and now it's your turn. You have to decide, do I save the data on the camera, do I save it on the NVR, the HomeHub, or do I save it in multiple ways? But you don't have to decide right away, because this system is modular. You can easily expand it later, because that's what I did at the beginning too. You have the option of connecting more cameras. And if there's no free port here, then you just add a second switch or get a bigger switch to connect more cameras. Place the switches where the cameras are nearby. Use the switches for other things as well. But pay attention to the security settings, because if you make the cameras accessible on the internet and your private network is connected to it, a few settings should be taken into account. If you want to discuss this with me or have questions about this system, feel free to write a comment under this video. I would be really happy if we could discuss this in more depth with each other. And if my video was helpful to you, give this video a like, it helps me and my channel move forward. And feel free to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss videos like this. And if you want to know which components I used and what something like this costs and where I get it from, then take a look under the video in the video description. There you will find my advertising links. If you buy through the links, you won't have any disadvantages, but my channel gets a commission which I use to finance all of this. And I thank you very much for your support. I'm looking forward to the next video. Take care, don't forget the comment under the video, the like, take care, Bye.